They laughed at my accent in front of the entire boardroom, not a nervous laugh, not an awkward one, but the kind that assumes it has permission. The kind that believes it already owns the room. He tilted his head, smirked, and called me a lucky immigrant, as if my career were some charitable accident, as if 6 years of 16-hour days, sleepless nights, and code written in the dark were nothing more than good fortune handed to me by America itself. My voice, he said, was interesting, a faint southern drawl softened by traces of my grandmother's Colombian Spanish. He thought it made me sound weak. What he didn't know was that in exactly 1 week, I would dismantle his family's $700 million empire in front of 10,000 live investors, and I wouldn't raise my voice once while doing it. My name is Emily Dawson, and for 6 years, I built empires out of code at Neuralinks Technologies. At 32, I wasn't just another software engineer. I was the lead architect behind the AI framework that powered everything the company sold, from predictive analytics to neural processing systems. The technology one designed from scratch was valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, and every elegant, brutal, beautiful line of it carried my fingerprints. The morning everything changed began like any other. I arrived at our San Francisco headquarters at 7:30, coffee in hand, already reviewing performance metrics in my head. The acquisition email had landed overnight. Neuralinks had been purchased by Hale Financial Group for a number no one officially confirmed, but everyone quietly agreed was north of $2 billion. We'd expected a buyout eventually. What we hadn't expected was what walked through the glass doors that Tuesday morning. Richard Hale entered first, silver-haired, tailored suit, the kind of presence that made junior engineers straighten their posture without realizing why. But it wasn't Richard who made my stomach tighten. It was the younger man trailing behind him, designer sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor, confidence radiating from someone who had never once watched a deployment fail at 3 in the morning. "Team," Richard announced once we were all seated in the main conference room, "I'd like you to meet my son, Ethan Hale. He'll be joining Neuralinks as our new Chief Technology Strategy Officer." Chief Technology Strategy Officer. Ethan couldn't have been older than 28. His LinkedIn, which I'd skimmed later out of pure disbelief, proudly listed an MBA from Wharton and exactly 0 lines of real engineering experience. He smiled like someone touring property he already believed belonged to him. "Excited to bring some fresh perspective here," he said, scanning the room. His eyes landed on me. "Especially interested in optimizing our AI infrastructure. I've been reading about your work, Emma." "It's Emily," I corrected, evenly. "Right. Emily," he said, smile unchanged. "The one who built the core systems." Impressive, for someone who started as a junior developer. "Where are you from originally?" The question wasn't casual. It hovered. My credentials were public. MIT. Google. Microsoft. 5 patents pending. None of that was what he wanted. "I grew up in Texas," I said. "My grandmother was from Colombia." The silence was immediate. Someone shifted in their chair. My colleague Sarah shot me a look that said, "Don't engage." Ethan's smile sharpened. "Interesting. That explains the accent. Must have been quite the journey. America really is the land of opportunity, isn't it? Even people like you can make it, if they work hard enough. People like you." The words slid across the table. I felt my grandmother's voice in my chest before I answered. "I suppose my patents and the AI framework that generates 40% of this company's revenue speak for themselves." Richard cleared his throat, redirecting the meeting, but the damage was done. 6 years of my life had just been reduced to a curiosity, something to be assessed by a man who probably couldn't write a basic script without help. I went back to my desk, hand steady by habit, not by feeling. The framework I built wasn't just code. It was architecture, logic layered on logic, neural systems refined over years of iteration. I designed it to be scalable, secure, and above all, protected. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Don't let him get to you. You know what you're worth. I looked through the glass walls at Ethan settling into the corner office that used to belong to our CTO, and I understood something with unsettling clarity. This wasn't about worth. This was about power, and he'd already decided who deserved it. What Ethan didn't know was that I'd learned long ago that the best code isn't just functional. It's defensive. Every system I designed included authentication protocols, usage verification, and something far more important. Ownership. My patents weren't decorative. They were legal landmines. He could posture all he wanted, but ownership was a different game. As I pulled up my documentation that evening and began organizing backups, I smiled to myself. He thought my accent made me weak. He was wrong. It made him careless. 3 weeks later, the first crack appeared. I noticed unusual activity on our development servers. Massive downloads of the core framework at 2 and 3 in the morning. Administrative credentials I didn't recognize. During lunch, I showed Sarah the logs. These aren't ours, she said quietly. I nodded. And the access patterns match Stratton Consulting, the efficiency firm Ethan brought in. Her face drained of color. They're taking everything. That afternoon, a Slack message arrived. Mandatory meeting. Bring documentation. Ethan stood at the front, flanked by consultants, voice polished and empty. As part of our optimization strategy, we're auditing all technological assets, he said, sliding documents across the table. I scanned the pages, eyes locking onto a clause buried deep in the text. All intellectual property, including patents filed or pending, transferred irrevocably to Neuralinks. I'll need my lawyer to review this, I said. That won't be necessary, Ethan replied. Everyone else has signed. My employment contract states I retain ownership of my patents, I said. This overrides that. Times change, he said coolly. Team players understand that. That night, I stayed late, digging deeper. What I found made my hands tremble for the first time in years. Stratton Consulting had cloned our entire repository to external servers registered to a company incorporated 2 months earlier. Hale Innovations Incorporated. CEO, Ethan Hale. When Marcus, one of my senior developers, quietly told me he'd overheard Ethan planning to transfer the technology and cut me loose, something inside me settled. Not anger. Certainty. I called my patent lawyer the next morning. By the time I finished explaining, her calendar was clear. Emily, she said, reviewing the evidence, this isn't just theft. It's fraud. I didn't argue. I showed her the architecture, the licensing controls built into the system. Without authorization, I said, the framework can't function. She leaned back slowly. During the launch? That's the only time it matters. She studied me. That's ruthless. No, I said. It's precise. By the time I sent the internal notice clarifying patent ownership, Ethan was already escalating. He stormed into my office, called me a nobody, a diversity hire who got lucky. I stood, met his eyes, and said the only truth that mattered. That code is mine. He told me I'd made the biggest mistake of my career. As he left, I opened my secure laptop and began final preparations. Ethan thought he was playing chess. He didn't realize I'd already won, and he hadn't even seen the board yet. The week before the launch moved like a storm you could see coming but couldn't stop. On the surface, Neuralinks looked unstoppable. Marketing banners filled the lobby, investors flew in from New York and London, and Project Helix was everywhere, whispered like a prophecy that would redefine enterprise AI. Underneath that confidence, the company was rotting from the inside. Slack channels buzzed late into the night. Developers were exhausted, consultants were nervous, and Ethan Hale grew louder, sharper, more reckless by the hour. He thought volume equaled authority. He thought speed could replace ownership. He was wrong on both counts. By Monday morning, my lawyer had everything she needed. The evidence trail was airtight. Unauthorized downloads. Shell companies. Internal messages that clearly showed intent to transfer my patented framework without consent. When she sent the cease and desist letter to Neuralink's leadership and legal team, it wasn't dramatic. It was clinical. Clear notice. Clear consequences. I watched the email send confirmation appear on my screen and felt something close to calm. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Control. My phone rang less than 10 minutes later. Richard Hale. His voice was polite, strained, still trying to sound like the man who believed this could be smoothed over with a handshake. "Emily, let's not do this publicly," he said. "We can reach an arrangement." I told him the terms hadn't changed. Proper licensing. Acknowledgement of ownership. Compensation for infringement. Silence followed, then a subtle shift in his tone. "You're being unreasonable." I smiled, alone in my apartment. "No, Richard. I'm being precise." Ethan's response was predictable. He dismissed the letter as intimidation. He told the team they'd found workarounds. He put everything on schedule, refused to delay the launch, and sent one last message to me late that night. "Helix launches tomorrow with or without you. Enjoy watching real Americans build something meaningful." I saved the email, forwarded it to my lawyer, and shut my laptop. He just handed me intent in writing. Tuesday morning arrived clean and bright, the kind of Silicon Valley day that makes disasters feel impossible until they aren't. I made coffee the way my grandmother taught me, slow and deliberate, and opened my control panel. Thousands of authentication requests were already queued, every system preparing to go live. The framework waited quietly, obediently, for a valid license that would never arrive. At 10 o'clock sharp, the live stream began. 10,000 investors. Media outlets. Analysts. Ethan took the stage in a tailored suit that screamed confidence. He spoke about innovation, disruption, the future. He talked over applause that hadn't been earned yet. When he announced the live demonstration, I leaned forward. This was the moment. The first query processed halfway, then stalled. A loading wheel spun where results should have appeared. Ethan laughed it off. Tried again. The interface froze. Error messages flickered across the screen before going black. The room shifted. You could feel it through the live stream. The silence wasn't technical. It was existential. Behind the scenes, every instance of my framework had done exactly what it was designed to do. Without authorization, it returned nothing. No crashes. No explosions. Just absence. The most devastating response of all. The chat exploded. Investors demanded explanations. Journalists clipped screenshots. The stock ticker on my second monitor began to fall, fast and without mercy. 5%. 10. 15. Richard rushed onto the stage, voice cracking as he promised a temporary issue. There was no backup. There never was. At 10:05, my lawyer's scheduled email to the sex whistleblower division sent automatically, detailing the unauthorized use of patented technology in a public investor presentation. At 10:07, Financial News broke the story. At 10:10, the stock was down nearly 30% and trading was halted. My phone rang again. "Richard, no pretense left now." "Please," he said. "We'll sign whatever you want." I told him the price had gone up. Damages. Public acknowledgement. And one more thing. A public apology from Ethan, on record, for his comments about immigrants and accents. Silence stretched, heavy and bitter. Then a defeated agreement. I restored partial access. Enough to stop the bleeding. Not enough to save the launch. The damage was permanent. By noon, Helix was dead. By afternoon, Ethan was gone. Security escorted him out past the same engineers he dismissed, mocked, and overworked. The board announced an internal investigation. Lawsuits followed like clockwork. Ethan called me once that evening. His voice was unrecognizable. Broken. Furious. Afraid. He said I'd ruined his life. I told him the truth. He'd done that himself the moment he decided my accent made me smaller than him. I hung up and didn't look back. The apology went public that night. Carefully worded. Legally sanitized. Still devastating. He acknowledged my ownership. He admitted wrongdoing. The internet did the rest. By the end of the week, the Hale family empire was collapsing under investigations, resignations, and lawsuits. 6 months later, Ethan pled guilty to corporate fraud. 5 years in federal prison. No future in tech. No legacy to inherit. I didn't celebrate. I built. Dawson Intelligence launched quietly, deliberately, with a team chosen for talent, not pedigree. Engineers from everywhere. Accents from everywhere. Patents properly attributed. Code protected and respected. When investors came calling, I listened, then declined. We weren't for sale. Not anymore. Sometimes I think about that boardroom. About the laugh. About the assumption. They thought my accent was a weakness. They thought it marked me as temporary. But it was never a flaw. It was a warning. A reminder that I'd crossed borders, learned systems, and survived worlds they'd never even noticed. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated because of how you speak or where you come from, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. If you believe talent matters more than titles and ownership matters more than ego, hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And remember this, your voice doesn't need permission to matter. Your work speaks louder than their prejudice ever could.